Welcome to the... Oh.
Wow.
Someday we'll figure out this whole podcast thing and we'll be professionals. But anyway, this is the Castle of Spirits, Episode 3 podcast.
I can't believe we're in Episode 3. It feels like we're hitting third gear or something.
I know.
We are still figuring out exactly what the format of the show is really going to be like. And all of that can change in a heartbeat.
And I think it will, especially this early on.
Well, and you told me that you had an idea for doing something in this episode that's different from what we did before, and I'm excited about that. So
yeah, I have something for a little bit later in the episode. Yep.
But officially today, the reason we're excited to be here is because we announced that castleofspirits.com website is now accepting submissions again for the first time in 4 years.
I don't know. It's been several years. But anyway, we are thrilled to be accepting submissions again. So if you have a story, any kind of paranormal story, I mean, yeah, this website was founded on ghosts, and ghosts honestly have my heart. That's my paranormal jam. You know, other people are super into cryptids or UFOs or whatever.
Sasquatch. I guess that's cryptids.
That falls into cryptids.
Sorry, never mind.
Ghosts have my heart, and that is what the website was founded on. But honestly, if it's paranormal and it's true with a very small parenthetical italicized-ish, then please submit it through our website, because we would love to have the opportunity to read it and publish it on the website. We also have a feature where you can upload photos and videos, as well as only one. As of this moment, we can only accept one audio file. So if you have a good EVP, you can submit it through there. If you have several EVPs, you can either consolidate them into one file or turn them into a video file. Yeah. And just with a static image, and you can upload multiples that way. But yeah, let's get this website going and full of really awesome paranormal, creepy, spooky, otherworldly stories.
What about elves or elves cryptids? Sorry. Humor.
Yeah. So anyway, today we have stories to tell. Do you have a story to tell, Vince? Do you want to tell your story first? I went first the last two times.
I'd rather hear from you.
I think you should go first.
I think you have a more pleasant voice than I do, and I would rather hear from you today.
But you have to tell a story.
I do have a story, actually, and I chose a story.
Let's just make sure our stories aren't the same.
Absolutely not.
What's the date on your story?
My story was posted on castleofspirits.com in February of 2006.
Okay, so we have different dates.
The story I chose to tell today is called Just a Mile Down the Road by Anonymous in USA. I almost said USA, California. But that is the location. The story begins like this. My office building is located in Sunnyvale, California. It's just down the road, a little over a mile from a Toys R Us store. I mention this particular toy store because many websites have mentioned it as being haunted. I believe a well-known psychic even held a seance there and encountered the lost spirit of someone named Johnny Johnson, who still remains. I have been to this Toys R Us store dozens of times, hoping to see some kind of paranormal activity, but have never seen anything. My office building, on the other hand, is another story. It's a large 2-story building, and my company occupied 2 bottom suites. There were probably 20 suites total in the building. Our neighbors were other small companies and even a couple of doctors' offices. I'm not that familiar with the history of the city, only that the area where the Toys R Us and my building were located is said to have been part of a large ranch and orchard. A lot of weird things happened to me while I occupied our second suite. Most of my co-workers were in the larger suite across the hall, and there were only 2 of us in this other room. The room had a smaller office in one corner where the office manager, OM, spent most of her time, while I had a desk by one of the windows. It was basically a room with a small room. One door led out into the hallway, and the other door was an exit to the parking lot. There were several occurrences, and I have to begin with the one that startled me the most. I was at my desk, which faced the hallway. I was working at something on my computer and could see the door just beyond. As I sat working, I saw a person walk in, go across the room, and enter the smaller office. The person looked small, wearing a pink top, and had dark hair. I didn't think anything out of the ordinary since my manager was petite and had dark hair, but as soon as I thought that, I realized something was wrong. My manager was wearing a cream-colored sweater that day, not pink. I then heard a noise by the hall door and saw that my OM had entered after using the ladies' room. I stared in complete shock. Who in the world just came in and walked into her office? I got up and walked the 20 steps inside her small office and found it absolutely empty. For anyone to leave, they would have had to have come out this very same way they entered, by the hall door, which I was standing next to, or by the exit door, which I had a clear view of. There were many instances where I would be in my OM's small office and could hear someone moving things around in the outer office. It sounded like someone was looking for something. Every time I peeked out the door to see who was there, thinking they needed some help, no one would be in the office. This was almost a daily occurrence. Another time, I was stocking some books on the shelves near the hall doorway. I had my back to the smaller office. The OM had what I would call a cup cover that she used. She drank tea, and to keep the contents warm, she was always covering the cup with this cover. The noise it made was similar to the sound when a pot or pan is covered. It's a very distinct sound, and I must have heard it over 3 or 4 times a day. While stocking the shelves, I heard that cup cover being used. I turned to go into that room to talk to her. I took 2 steps and stopped. Once again, there was no one in the room. The OM was in the other suite doing some work, and her cup cover were on her desk side by side. One afternoon around 3 p.m., when I was looking over the shipping materials under the tables, I saw what looked to be a dark mist of smoke rise up and hover just a few inches above the carpet. I blinked my eyes and saw it clearly for maybe 10 seconds before it disappeared. The last incident I remembered was coming in one morning and opening up the offices. When I opened the door to my office, I was about to turn the lights on, and I saw across the room someone seated at my desk staring at me. The person was definitely female with dark hair, and she was there for just 2 seconds before she vanished. I almost yelled, "Who the hell are you?" when she disappeared. We eventually gave up on the second office when the company had to downsize a few years ago. I wasn't too upset having to give up that larger office for a smaller cubicle in the other suite. At least I knew who I was working with in the other room. And again, that story was submitted by Anonymous in USA, California, February of 2006.
That was kind of a creepy story. I really liked that one. So we actually talked about the haunted Toys R Us briefly in our last episode.
We did. And that was a Toys R Us in Sunnyvale, California.
Yeah.
That I have actually been to.
Yep, we talked about it last week.
Talked about that already. And I thought it was really cool because I know that area. Mm-hmm. I remember it well. And I could almost picture, where this office was, where this office building was. And when you're in the kind of proximity to something like that, that's either really like a famous location or an infamous location, you don't really pay it much attention. Now I wish I would have gone there more often. I wish that I had taken you there.
You know what I want to know? Sorry, I know I'm kind of taking over your segment here, but I want to put a call out. If anyone listening ever actually worked at this office building where this person is writing the story from, or at the haunted Toys R Us, I want to hear your stories. If you've got stories about working in that office building or that Toys R Us.
Well, we don't know where the office building was.
Right, but it's in Sunnyvale by the Toys R Us, right? So,
within a mile.
Okay, within a mile. So if you worked in a haunted office building within a mile of the haunted Toys R Us, or if you worked at the haunted Toys R Us, submit your story to castleofspirits.com.
Or Anonymous, if you're still out there listening, following along.
Heck yeah.
Write us an email or let us know that you're still out there, and just give us an update. I'm sure there's something something crazy.
Oh, and you know what is new since our last episode? We have an email address. In our last episode, we didn't have an email address, but now we do.
We do.
And it is COS, so that stands for Castle of Spirits, obviously. COS ghostkeepers@gmail.com.
Bam.
But don't submit your stories through there because we'll probably ignore them because I have a very particular system. Anyway, go ahead. I'm not going to take over your
She
segment.
has a unique submission system.
Well, it involves
on the
spreadsheets. I'm very spreadsheet
Right.
oriented.
All of
And
our-
if you work outside of my spreadsheet system, I will ignore you. And it's not personal.
Only paranormal stories submitted via Excel spreadsheet will make it to the website. Anything else will be discarded. If you send us a cryptic letter in the mail with crinkly paper written in blood, we will ignore it.
Yeah, it has to be submitted in an Excel spreadsheet.
We might hang it on the wall, but it won't make it onto the website.
All right, continue your segment. I'm sorry for taking over. So anyway, why did you choose that story today?
No, I felt that it kind of flowed with the last episode.
Yeah.
Talking about that Toys R Us. And I was tickled to find because of your made-to-order search function on the website.
Oh, yes.
I was able to go to the
I'm
website.
so proud of that.
And search Toys R Us. And I was able to search. Oh, yes, absolutely. That's our black cat, Mr. Moon, chiming in with his opinion about Toys R Us and ghosts.
Well, he knows the Halloween season is upon us, and that is his season, being that he's a black cat. So
He absolutely is.
anyway, yes, my fancy search feature that I am so insanely proud of. I did have to hire out a little bit of coding help from our good friend Tanner. Thank you, Tanner. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I went to the website and I typed in Toys R Us, Sunnyvale, and there it popped right up.
Nice. Nice. Do you have anything else to say about that?
I have nothing else except that I did work in an office building down the street from the Winchester Mystery House.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
down the street from Toys R Us. That place was not haunted to the best of my recollection. I never had any experiences in there. It was creepy after dark because it was an old
Wooden chip?
house.
Sorry, I can't help it. It's like a nervous tick. Anytime somebody says old, it has to be a wooden ship.
Okay.
Okay, go
It was an old wooden ship on Winchester Mystery Boulevard, on Winchester Boulevard.
Oh, Winchester. That's our romantic place. I'm sure we'll talk about Winchester several times throughout the course of this
A
podcast.
place we love to go every time we're in California.
Well, so I should now tell why it's our romantic place. So, Winchester Mystery House was our first date.
Now, in the last episode, you told everybody that our first date was me taking you to the Jack in the Box drive-thru and driving you down the haunted stretch of 101 called Blood Alley.
Well, okay, so I was
while
being
listening to an old Art Bell episode.
So I was being trite. Or, just calling that our first date to be funny.
That was our first hangout.
That was our first hangout, but our first date was Winchester Mystery House.
Now, and a lot of people I have to interrupt because a lot of people are probably thinking, oh, how cute. A couple of 18-year-olds getting jacket. No, I was like 30.
Yeah. Well,
And-
I was much younger than that, but
Jane was much younger, but we were full-grown adults doing these ridiculous things.
I'm several years younger than Vince. But anyway, so our first date was at Winchester Mystery House, and we had this cute, well, I don't want to call him cute, but we had this tour guide. He was this older gentleman, and he was very proper and very sweet, and he had these very clean and dainty white gloves on, like a butler. Kind of reminded me of a butler with his little fabric white gloves on, and he was very proper and very square, and I really liked him. And then we'd been there several times after that. Whenever we would go to California, we would go there. We'd probably been there 3 times at least since our first date, right? Had different tour guides every time. Anyway, so a few years later, after we had been there several times after our first date, we got married. Aww.
Isn't that sweet?
And we, Oh, I thought you loved me. And we were back in San Jose, and we thought, let's go to Winchester. We haven't been here for, I don't know, it's probably about a year at that point. Let's go to Winchester again. So it was like our honeymoon, and we went to Winchester. And who did we have for our tour guide? The guy that we had on our first date. Aw. And we told him, you were our tour guide on our first date, and now we're on our honeymoon. Anyway, so...
Well, that's our Winchester Mystery House story. And
sorry I trounced on your segment.
No, that's all right. It's all organic, and it's all good. It's all ghostly, and...
we're figuring it out as we go along.
As we go. I do believe, however...
In spooks?
In that.
Okay.
However, you have a story to tell too, don't you?
Do have a story.
I'll bet you do.
I do. Okay, so... Oh, I lost my story. Hang on. All right, so my story comes from October of 2015, and it was submitted by Brittany in Virginia, and it's titled Bed and Breakfast. Let me start by giving a short backstory explaining why I was in said place and why I was with who I was with. I won't mention names and the place that we stayed to protect their privacy. The place where everything occurred doesn't really like to have their paranormal phenomenon brought to light so as not to affect their business. To be honest, I always thought this was really funny because they hold ghost tours in the house, but I digress. This isn't an incredibly scary story for those just reading it, but worth a share, I think. I'm a paranormal fanatic. Aren't we all? And have done work in the modeling field from time to time. I was asked by 2 friends to go stay in a bed and breakfast and model in some of the period clothing to help promote their website, as well as keep our personal portfolios. One of the 2 friends is a photographer, and the other is a pretty well-respected paranormal expert who has investigated this place multiple times with groups. After getting the story of the house, I decided I would go, and after we finished our work, we would try to catch some EVP recordings and try to reach out to the spirits. Something that I have never done, but have always wanted to try. The owner of the house let us have the entire house to ourselves since she knows my friend so well and trusted that we wouldn't burn the place down. There were also no visitors that night, so us 3 had the entire house to ourselves. A brief history of the house. Built in the 17 to 1800s and was the home of a slave owner. It was kept in as good a shape as possible, given it's a historical building. Renovated to have faux fireplaces in each room and very authentic period relics, clothing, and beds kept inside. All throughout the day, I noticed a few things that caught my eye. Small things like a picture frame moving before my eyes and a chandelier shaking while there was no one moving it. I just chalked it up to the house being old. After we finished our work, we decided to sit in the living area to rest and have a beer or 2. Then a strange feeling of nausea hit me. It was very odd because it didn't start happening until we sat in the living area. I noticed that there was a faint cigar smell and asked my paranormal friend if she noticed it. She then told me that the room we were in was believed to be the sitting room back when the owners were still alive, and they would have their cigars and drinks in that room. She also stated that during some of the ghost tours, people have also mentioned this. I decided that we should leave the room and go sit outside. The nausea wore off within a minute. I wasn't bothered by any of this because, hey, I knew what I was getting into. After a beer or 2, we decided to hook up the EVP recorder and explore the house. We visited every room, including a room where Jeb Stewart was known to have stayed in at some point. We asked all of the basic questions that you could think to ask a spirit. The last room we went in was the room that Jeb stayed in. I noticed that the fireplace was on. Funny thing is, none of us had been in that room until that point when we all went together. Again, I ignored it and went about my business. My friend mentioned that female visitors during the paranormal investigations have complained about a feeling that they are being groped. Of course, with the EVP recording device glued to my hand and head, I tried talking. Nothing. We went on for about 30 minutes and gave up. Maybe I was too eager. I mean, I was really begging for any trace of afterlife, anything that would have sufficed for me. Still nothing. At this point, it's probably around 10 p.m. We settled down and decided to bunk up in the same king-sized bed. Less cleaning for the owner the next day since we were staying for free. After a bit more chit-chat, we all passed out with the TV on. That's when things got weird. I woke up, I'm gonna guess between 2 and 4 a.m. The TV had automatically cut itself off because it was on a timer, so I had been asleep for a little while. We kept one of the lamps on in case we needed to get up and use the restroom, so you could clearly see throughout the room. When I awoke, I was covered in sweat. It felt like I had been dreaming a bad dream and suddenly woke up and couldn't move a muscle. I stared blankly at the ceiling until I started to hear a tapping noise coming from across the room near the fireplace. A very faint tapping noise that sounded a lot like fingernails tapping on a window. It started out slowly and started to move towards me. At this point, I'm freaking out, mostly because I was paralyzed in the bed and had just woken up. The closer it got, the louder and faster it got, when suddenly it felt as if the noise was right next to my ear. Then nothing. At some point during the noise, I closed my eyes. I opened them and looked directly at the ceiling. A small black shadow moved very swiftly from one end of the bed to the other. Eyes closed again. Nothing to report after that, except for the fact that as time went on, it got more and more unbearably hot, but I was terrified to even move, much less take the covers off. I wanted to wake up one of my friends, but I felt like I couldn't even speak. I think after about 2 hours, I finally saw what looked like the night turning into dawn, and I fell into what felt like one of the deepest sleeps. I didn't hear my friends when they woke up, and finally, around 10 the next morning, I woke up. I felt like I hadn't slept at all. My body was so tired, but I forced myself out of bed to get some coffee. My friend, who is the paranormal expert, looked at me and asked how I slept. Awful, I said to her. I asked if either of them had woken in the night at all, and neither of them did, not even for a bathroom break. She looked at me and said, I know. I went upstairs when I got up this morning to pack up all of my EVP equipment. While I was packing, I heard a very faint voice say, We came to visit her last night. Now, let me just say, normally I would call BS on this story really fast. But how could she have known I had any kind of visitor during the night when she hadn't woken up to see my whole episode? How could she have known that before I even had a chance to tell them the story of what happened to me? After we left, I felt a huge relief. I was so tired I fell asleep during the long ride home and was hesitant for a while to even talk about it. Maybe it's because this was my first real paranormal experience. I have no idea. All I know is whatever happened that night and whoever tried to contact me scared me for a good while. It doesn't seem so scary now, but during the experience, I've never been so terrified. I've been invited to go on another paranormal trip to an old sanatorium. I'm hesitant. Again, thank you to Brittany in Virginia for submitting that one in October of 2015. And
so why did you read that story? What about that story stood out among the 4,600 other websites or other stories?
Other stories. So I think I chose it for a couple of reasons. I think it was like, it was about 3/4 of the way through the story when I realized, oh yeah, I used to do ghost hunting. There was a little group that I was with back in the 90s, if you can believe that, where we used to go do ghost hunting things here and there around town. And actually the group I was with, the GIS, was featured on the Art Bell program several times back, obviously, when Art Bell was alive.
The GIS, what does that stand for?
Ghost Investigator Society, because we didn't like the word hunter.
Right. That's, I think, something that set that group apart.
Yeah.
And if I may speak for Art Bell, in Art Bell's eyes, he loved having Brendan and Barbara on the show.
Yeah.
I love the connection that you have with that there, because truly anybody who was a fan of Art Bell's will know that he loved talking about EVP, especially having the GIS on. And one thing that I really love about that is that you can attest to the fact that the EVPs that they captured were actual EVPs. They were not manufactured EVPs.
Yeah. Well, there were even a couple that they played in the early days when GIS was on there, where I was like, I was there when that was recorded. I remember that. And I recorded several of my own. And you got to remember that this is back in like 98, 99. So we didn't have digital recorders. I was recording on mini tape cassettes. And I have a mini tape cassette recorder or player now, but every once in a while I come across a little mini tape cassette and I'm like, ooh, I bet there's EVP on this, but so we should probably try and find a little mini tape player. But I do remember several times while I was out with them capturing really, really compelling EVPs. One of my favorites, I have several stories of them, and hopefully someday I can dig up some of these tapes and get a recorder to transfer them digitally, and then I will absolutely share them on the podcast. But Brendan, his wife, and I, well, they weren't married then. Jenny and I were in a cemetery here in our town, and it was the middle of the day. I had just bought a new recorder, so we just wanted to go out and test out the recorder, see what the quality was like. We weren't like trying to do a ghost hunt or anything. It was just the two of us, just Jenny and I. And we were in this cemetery just kind of walking around. It wasn't like a particularly creepy day. It wasn't like gray or anything. It was just broad daylight. And we were the only ones in the cemetery. It wasn't a very big cemetery. And there was this statue of one of the tombstones. It was a really beautiful statue, very, very tall. I drove you past it. You probably don't remember it, Vince, but I drove you past it in the last year. It's a statue of a woman in like robes, and she's standing like looking down. She's up on a pedestal, and it's probably a 7-8 foot tall statue. The woman on the pedestal probably comes to my shoulders, and then the woman is up. So it's very, very tall. And we were standing there and just chatting and recording. We weren't trying to do EVP necessarily. And we were reading some of the tombstones, and we were reading this one with the tall statue. And I remember saying, oh, that's really sad. And there was this small voice that came in. It was very clearly not Jenny or I. And this voice sounded so sad. And it said, she's dead. Mm. And I think that was the only thing we got out of that entire, maybe it was like 20 minutes we were there. And that one has always stuck with me. That was probably 1999. That one has always stuck with me. It was just it had a good amount of emotion, it had an emotional impact. But I've got several other stories that are just really good EVP stories, but I won't inundate you with them now. I'll save them for future episodes because we want to keep you on the line. You must continue listening to the Castle of Spirits podcast.
But on a more serious note, I think a lot of people think, I don't know what to think about EVP. I don't know what to make of it.
Honestly, let me say that I also don't know what to make of it.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody really knows what to make of it, even experts, if there are experts.
I think it's creepy, and I've personally had some really insane experiences with EVP, but am I ready to go out on a limb and flat out say it is ghosts? Am I going to be the Giorgio Tsoukalos of ghosts? No.
Your hair doesn't stand up enough.
It might be ghosts. It might not. But anyway, yeah.
Well, there, however, you have an example of at least one EVP that can't really be described away as crosstalk, maybe some sort of a radio broadcast.
Well, yeah, radio broadcast interference wasn't really a thing when, back then when we were using these analog recorders with tape cassettes. today, digitally, yeah, you can maybe make a case for.
But in that situation, it was something that was answering you, or at least responding to something you said. It was interacting with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that's always kind of freaked me out about when I've heard EVP is that if it just speaks a random word or a random sentence when somebody's either just walking through a room or talking about something else, that's one thing. But if you actually make a statement like that, like, oh, that's really sad and she's dead, comes back as an answer.
Yeah.
That seems to indicate to me that is some sort of a conscious intelligence that's talking to you.
Yeah,
or
that's
at least
interacting with the situation. Yeah.
Right.
And I would say the majority of the EVPs that stick in my mind, keep in mind, I haven't done this. I haven't gone out and actively pursued any EVP recordings since probably 2000. And, with, like I said, the mini tape cassettes, the analog recording, I haven't really done any of that in 20 plus years, but there's a very small handful of recordings that stick in my mind. And of that small handful, I would say there's one that I can think of, the very first one that I ever captured, that, oh man, if I could find the tape for that, I would just die. It would be so awesome. But with the exception of that one, the other ones that stick in my mind were responding to the things that I or the other people I was with were saying. They were interacting with our conversation. I don't have memories of EVPs just being like a random word being said, or because you also have to remember that the human brain does the thing, right? The human brain is conditioned to recognize human speech or human faces.
Patterns.
We look for patterns. And so, it's just the same thing when you look at the moon or when you look at a piece of toast or a tree trunk and you see a human face. That's a mental condition, not a mental condition like an illness, but it's what your brain does. Your brain looks for human faces. And it's the same thing. I think that in a tiny sound out of context, your brain looks for human voices. It analyzes, is this a human voice? It kind of sounds like it could have been this phrase. And I think that a lot of EVP is definitely that. It's the people, maybe they moved, their clothing shuffled. I've definitely heard where I know for a fact in my recording that I made that I shuffled or I moved something. And when I listen back to it, I'm like, oh, it kind of sounded like it said this, but I know for a fact that it's because I was digging through my purse looking for batteries at that moment or, whatever. But there's absolutely these moments like her saying she's dead, that I was not digging through my purse. My clothing didn't shuffle. The person I was with, it was not her voice. And I know she didn't say anything because I was there. She was there. We both knew that. And these other situations that I was in, it wasn't clothing shuffling or a mosquito flying by. If you think that a mosquito cannot cause quote unquote ghost/angel photos or weird EVPs on recorders, then you haven't been ghost hunting enough, because I can't tell you how many photos I've taken of mosquitoes that I've seen other people that are like, look at this photo I took of an angel. I'm like, bro, it's a mosquito. I have taken accidentally photos of mosquitoes while ghost hunting, and that's what it looks like. And when they get close to your microphone and they make this sound, it's a mosquito.
Now, that said, you did tell me a story.
Oh, what's
about some incident that occurred in a graveyard when you were out with your ghost hunting friends. and it creeped me out, and it was not a mosquito, but I think that we should probably save that for another time.
But just give me a hint, because I don't know what one you're talking about.
The light.
The light. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about the light. I'm sure we'll talk about the light several times, but let's save that. Anyway, so I chose that story, like I said, because it kind of reminded me a little bit of my ghost hunting days. Well, about 3/4 of the way through it did. Also, it kind of reminded me of Winchester Mystery House, like we had just been talking about right before. Because, like in that story, Winchester Mystery House does ghost tours, but also doesn't want to promote that they're haunted.
Right. That's one of the things that I find really strange is that
we do ghost tours.
They do ghost
tours,
about it. Yet they maintain what was the colors of the house? Isn't it the facade of the house, the colors that it's painted in?
No, that's modern. Remember, there's that section where it's painted black. And something else, they said that's probably the color that she had.
Originally, the house was black, and it had a more sinister appearance. And they've sort of spruced it up to make it look like a historic building that's really cool. Bring your family and buy some things at the gift shop.
Yeah, and then sign up for a late-night ghost tour.
A late-night flashlight ghost tour.
Which we've done and was amazing, by the way.
I'll give you an example of how committed I am to our love of the unknown and the ghostly. We had the opportunity to go to California around Halloween of
a million years ago.
Of 2007.
Are you sure?
Oh, yes.
How do you know that?
Because it was also the same month that my 20th high school reunion was taking place. And we decided to skip going to the reunion and go the week after when we got tickets to a flashlight tour at the Winchester Mystery House.
That's right. We did the flashlight tour. We had to wear the hard hats, and we went into the basement and with the flashlights. And seriously, Winchester Mystery House is one of my favorite places in the whole world. If you have never been to the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California, you need to do yourself such a service by going there. I don't know. I think there's something for everyone there, right? If you just like architecture, this is your jam. If you like history, this is your jam. If you just like creepy old houses, here you go. If you like ghost stories, by all means. I can't imagine if you just like pretty old houses, this is it. I can't imagine someone who wouldn't like to go there. Like, it's the perfect place to go. Everyone can find something about it that they love. And we haven't been there in several years.
A long time.
A long time. I really miss that place. I want to go again soon.
We will go back.
Okay. So that is all for our stories tonight. Today, this episode. There's another segment that I've been wanting to bring into this podcast, and I guess episode 3 is not too bad of a time to start. I don't know how frequently we'll be able to bring this in. I guess it depends on how often the paranormal hits the headlines, because I would love to do a paranormal news segment whenever possible. What do you think of that, Vince? Should we do that?
I like it. I like it a lot. You've got some paranormal news?
I do have a paranormal news.
Well, then should we just do the whole, let's do some intro music for
maybe one of those
right
news.
now.
The beep, 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 beep.
Right. I was going to try it, but I don't think my voice would hit that high.
No, but you can download that. So do that over my voice right now. The beep, 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 beep. No? Okay.
Done.
Okay, thank you. So this article, it's about a video, and obviously I can't show you the video in the podcast, but we will link the video in the podcast notes. So whatever platform you're listening on, it will be in the podcast notes, or on our website, there'll be a link so you can read this full article and see the video that I'm talking about, okay? So this article comes from exemplar.com. Exemplar News. I don't know if I'm saying that right. The headline is Family's, quote, live photo captures something super creepy. And it's by Deanna Logan from just August 31st this year. So it's pretty new. All right. So the article says, The live feature on many people's camera phones are capable of making every snapshot into its own GIF. Like the magically moving photos of the Harry Potter films, this feature is meant to provide a little context around the moment you're trying to capture. What it is not supposed to do is scare the daylights out of you. But that is precisely what happened to this family who found something quite unexpected scurrying around. By the way, I just hate the word scurry. It's creepy. It's really creepy. And then, of course, it reminds me of Ghost Brothers. I love the Ghost Brothers. Anyway, who found something quite unexpected scurrying around in the background of their recent live photo. And then there's a TikTok video where you can see the photograph, and then you know how you can do the live photo, you can like hold it or whatever, and it shows you like 2-second clip or something, a video of that scene before and after the photo was taken. I think we all know what a live photo is. Anyway, in this video, a woman is showing how when a recent family photo around a campfire is switched to live mode, you can see a strange shadow creature moving around in the background. Though some who have viewed this image claim it's a dog, the hunched, scurrying creature, hunched is that's a yucky one. The hunched, scurrying creature does not look like man's best friend. More shadow than shape and almost humanoid, it sulks. The writer, Deanna, you use some really gross, spooky language, and I love it, and I'm repulsed by it. But anyway, more shadow than shape and almost humanoid, it sulks around the very edge of the photograph as if scared by the flash of light. Obviously, because this is TikTok, most commenters are immediately certain that it's a skinwalker, because, of course, a fearsome creature out of Native American legend who can change shape, mimic the voices of your loved ones, and other horrors. Was there a creature stalking this family? What happened to them after this picture was taken? So many questions raised by this video and so few answers. Vince, I want you to watch this video and tell me what you think. You might have to watch it for a second.
Okay, so we're going to get a live reaction. Okay.
Go ahead and push play and watch it.
How does this TikTok work?
You want to watch, you're going to see it on the kind of the lower right-hand side, behind the kid on the far right-hand side.
Okay, here we go. What? Oh, come on.
Did you see it?
It looked like a shadow.
Yeah.
But they're
you only see it for a second.
This video is being filmed in the dark by light of the camera or by the phone that's filming it.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
like
correct?
a camera. It's like a phone filming the screen of a phone. Yeah.
Right. And in in the climax of the clip, there appears to be sort of a dimming of the light suddenly. Mm. And in that dimming of light, there are shadows thrown that do resemble something sort of skulking past,
it didn't
slouching
look like
past.
But it was white. It was lighter color. How is a shadow a lighter color? Just because a shadow goes, I don't know. And it looked like it had form. It wasn't just like a little flash. Like a lot of times you see like a little light swoop and people are like, oh, is that a face in there? But that legit, it's got the shape of an animal and you can see the legs, like the back legs kind of, doing a running thing or whatever. No, you're not buying it.
I have a poster on my wall that says, I want to believe, but
I don't. Is that what you're saying?
You're making it hard.
I want to believe, but I just don't. Okay, well, I'm going to watch it again real quick.
I thought it was a cool video, but I'm not sold.
I don't know, man. When you watch it in slow-mo, I think it's creepy. I don't know.
It's creepy. I was expecting a little more, but...
Oh, did I build it up too much?
Maybe it was built up too much. Maybe it was just, you mentioned the word
I thought
TikTok,
it was
and
creepy.
I thought, oh God, this is going to be good.
Maybe the reason I thought it was creepy was because the writer, Deanna, right? Logan. She used all of my trigger words. There was hunched and sulking or skulking. Was it skulking? Yeah. Hunched and skulking and... what was the other word? Anyway, paranormal news. That was our paranormal news segment. What do you guys think about that? If you come across any paranormal news of any kind, feel free to email us the link to that and we will talk about it in an episode maybe. Again, the email address is ghostkeepers, keepers with an S at the end, @gmail.com. But yeah, you can send us, articles and links that you want us to potentially discuss on a podcast, and we can look at doing that. Other segments we're talking about bringing into the podcast are movie, book, music. So basically media suggestions, like what movie do we want to suggest to you today, or book, or
now we did
whatever.
Just watch Insidious Part 1.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. It's nothing against that movie. It's just ghost movies in general. I am such a snob. Like I roll so hard. Do I want a good ghost movie that scares the hell out of me? 100%. I want that. But if I see one more person flat out on the ground, get dragged screaming suddenly backwards into a black shadow, I'm going to stop watching movies forever. I'm so sick of that trope now.
Please don't do that again.
Stop doing it.
Stop.
But anyway, Insidious, it was better than I expected it to be. I think it kind of fell apart a little at the end.
Well, they all do.
But it was genuinely creepy, and I was really pleased that there were so many practical effects until that one scene where it was like crawling on the wall. I was like, oh, that's some cheesy CGI.
Yeah. Well, it's just an example of what we're willing to do. We're willing to suffer for our craft and to bring people movie recommendations that are 13 years too late.
We'll start watching some of the movies we've rolled our eyes at, and maybe we'll end up really liking them. I did like Insidious a lot more than I thought, like I said. What
was the movie we watched after that? The one with Ghost of the Ozarks. That's a fairly new movie.
Yeah.
2021.
So my impression of Ghosts of the Ozarks, it was I think it was mostly down to the editing, but I could be wrong. It was a little disjointed. Some of the acting was a little cheesy. Maybe it was the dialogue. It wasn't so much the acting. But it was a fun watch. I didn't hate it. It was a fun watch.
And it had some of our favorite actors in it, so.
I love Angela Bettis.
David Arquette.
And David Arquette. But, I mean, if you guys haven't seen May, it's not a ghost movie, but starring Angela Bettis, written and directed by Lucky McKee. May that's what I consider my chick flick.
So until next time, save us the aisle seat.
Oh, are we done?
Well, that was the end of our movie reviews.
Okay, that's the end of our movie reviews. We're done with movie reviews. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add for today's episode?
No, I'm just enjoying doing these, and I hope that you guys are enjoying listening to these. And if you've made it this far, you're a real trooper. But I encourage everybody to check out the website. Mm-hmm. You could probably lose yourself in the website.
Could?
With more than 4,600 true user-submitted stories.
And please submit your own. And if you don't have your own, your friends and family, somebody has a story. Please share the website with them and have them submit their story or submit it for them on their behalf. And let's get this website going again. We used to be so, just pumping out stories left and right years and years and years ago. I mean, this website's 25 years old, since 1997, and we'll talk about that maybe in our next episode, the origins of the website. But it was so bopping back then, and I just really want to get it bopping again. So let's get some stories going, and maybe we'll read your story on the podcast. All right. Do you have anything else you want to share before we sign off for this podcast episode, Vince?
Just the advice to stay spooky.